We're going to be taking a huge birthday trip along US 1. Come on, let's go. Alright everyone, today we're going to be starting off the big US 1 series by doing the southern states that US 1 goes through. Those states include Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. And we're going to be covering 1,100 miles of this road in this episode. And all four of these states actually are really good at signing US 1 with correct control cities. So this is going to be an awesome episode to start out with this series. So let us get started with US 1 in the southern states. But first, you're watching the TheDerpHog, where I make highways content on all sorts of different topics. If you've been enjoying it, be sure to hit that like button. And if you've been really enjoying it, be sure to smash that subscribe button so you're notified on all future videos. And if you really want to help out the channel, become a member today where you get custom cool emojis, early access to future videos, along with one free Azure request per month. And if you don't want to become a member, you can always just pay $3 for a intersection request in future videos. Those highways will be listed down in the description below, and I'll make sure to shout you out when that video releases. So let's get on with the highway. As we can see here, this is the map of US 1 Southern as it starts all the way down here in the Florida Keys, travels along the Keys up through the Florida coast, and into the states of Georgia and the Carolinas, ending at the Carolina border with Virginia. And this colored portion is the part of route that I've been on personally. So with that, we're talking about northbound US 1 Southern. So we begin here all the way down in the Florida Keys, and we get a begin US 1 shield. So that is awesome by FDOT here. And after traveling through those neighborhoods, we are now meeting with the Florida A1A for the first time, and it's certainly not for the last. And if you want to check out a video on Florida A1A, it's in the top right corner here. I made it for a celebration video last year. And here we get our first mileage time, with Miami being 150 miles away, while other two Florida Keys are secondary and tertiary controls respectively. And here is the view of US 1 as it's traveling along the Keys. Man, that is some stunning view. And then here on mainland Florida, we're meeting with the Florida's Turnpike well south of downtown Miami, as it gets the control cities of Miami and Orlando, while we just get one north for nothing, because it probably makes sense to take the Turnpike to get to Miami from here, instead of staying on one. But since there's really nothing important between here and this meeting with the Florida Turnpike, I decided to just skip ahead here. Now we're meeting with Florida Highway 826, or the Palmetto Expressway, which will take you around the city of Miami, while we're going to be continuing heading north into the city. And on our way towards downtown Miami, we actually passed by the University of Miami. Now we're meeting with Florida Highway 9 in the southern Miami exurbs. And here we meet the start of Interstate 95, the Great Interstate 95, as we're now going to be heading onto Brickell Avenue and into the heart of Miami. And our first major junction in the heart of Miami is US Highway 41. And if you're going to check out a video on US 41, it's in the top right corner here. And here we are going through some of the scenery of downtown Miami. Now we're meeting with Florida Highway A1A for the second time, as it will travel through Miami Beach. And then here we are meeting Interstate 195 along with US Highway 27, but for some reason FDOT is only mentioning Interstate 195 here. Poor US 27. And then here we meet with Florida 826 once again in North Miami Beach, which does become, like I said, the Palmetto Expressway. And then here we meet Interstate 595 in Fort Lauderdale, which will take you towards the port along with the International Airport, while we're going to be continuing towards downtown Fort Lauderdale. Now we're meeting with Florida Highway A1A for a third time, as we're about to enter into downtown Fort Lauderdale. Now we're meeting with US Highway 98 and Florida 80 in West Palm Beach. But first, we get a mileage time with Jacksonville on the bottom line from 263 miles away. That is awesome, F-Dot. It looks like that you're bringing your huge swing abilities once again, and it's on US 1. And here we meet with Florida Highway 76 in the Miami exurbs here. But our next mileage time we get Vero Beach as our primary from only 15 miles away. I mean, that's alright. Who's gonna be taking US 1 all the way up to Jacksonville anyways, but it was still cool seeing it being signed from 260 miles away. And then here we get another mileage shine with Sebastian on the top line and Melbourne now as our primary. And this mileage shine is actually on the left side of the road. That is very interesting. Here we meet with US Highway 192, which will take you over to Florida A1A and west over towards St. Cloud, Florida. Here again, another mileage shine with Cocoa Beach on the top line from 21 miles away, and Jacksonville has suddenly returned to our primary as 176 miles away. And here in Cocoa Beach, we meet with Florida Highway 404 here. Here we meet with Florida Highway 528, which will take you over to Florida A1A once again. And we can see after going through Cocoa Beach, we get Titusville on the top line, and Jacksonville is still our primary. Here in Titusville, or Titusville, we meet with Florida Highway 50 here. And the next mileage shine, we get Jacksonville now as our primary still, from 135 miles away. And I like how this mileage shine is just right in front of the Atlantic Ocean here. And here in the Daytona Beach area, we meet with Florida Highway 400, along with which will take you over to Interstate 4. And then now we're meeting with US Highway 92 as it's being signed west for DeLand and east for Daytona Beaches. Here we meet with Florida Highway 40 here, and this thing is just super funny. While I was collecting photos for this video, I stumbled across this. No, we're still heading north on US 1. It's just someone at FDOT decided to put up a south shield for US 1 instead of a north shield. So there's a Florida man story for you. And then we're now meeting Interstate 95 for the first time since all the way down in Miami, as it's being signed for Miami and Jacksonville. And our next mileage shine, we get Jacksonville still as our primary from 82 miles away. And then in Bunnell, we actually get another mileage sign with now St. Augustine as our secondary from 30 miles away. And here in St. Augustine, we meet with Florida A1A for another time. I believe this is the 5th time we meet it. It's either the 5th or the 6th. And then I decided to just skip ahead to the Jacksonville area. We're meeting with Florida Highway 9B, which will take you up to Interstate 295. And then now we're meeting with Interstate 295 personally, getting signed for International Airport in Savannah and south for Orange Park. And guess what? US 1 becomes a parallel route to Interstate 95 as we meet it in the heart of Jacksonville. And then now we're meeting with US Highway 90, and US 1 and 90 are now going to be concurrent as we cross into downtown Jacksonville. And here is a awesome view of the Jacksonville skyline as we're about to cross this bridge here. And then on the other side, in the heart of Jacksonville, we'll meet with US 17 along with the beginning of US Highway 23. Now we're meeting with Interstate 95 once again, and for some reason it has no control city going this direction. And then a ways up the road, we now reunite with US Highway 23. And I'm going to be skipping the US 23 concurrency because I already covered it in my US 23 videos. If you want to check that out in the top right corner here. So after splitting off from US Highway 23, our next control city here in Georgia is now Baxley. For our next mileage shine, we get Lines as our primary from 33 miles away, and Baxley as our secondary. Here in Baxley, we meet with US Highway 341 along with Georgia Highway 27 here. And our next mileage time, we now get Vidalia as our primary from 33 miles away. Here in Lyons, we meet with US Highway 280 here, and it looks like we're now getting signed for Swainsboro, which definitely is the correct choice because that's where we meet with US Highway 80. And then still, I believe in the Lions area, we now get Swainsboro and Augusta as our primary, so that is awesome. The next mileage time, we get Swainsboro, though, as our primary from 29 miles away. And then here, on our way to Swainsboro, we'll meet with Interstate 16, gain sign for Macon and Savannah, respectively. And then here we meet with US 80 in Swainsboro, and like we saw in the 80 video, we're still like a little ways out of downtown Swainsboro, so that's why it's getting signed for it. Our next mileage time, we now get Louisville. I've never heard of Louisville, Georgia before, but if you want to sign that, okay. And I believe in Wadley, we meet with US Highway 221 and are now going to be concurrent with it. Now let's see what this mileage sign says up ahead. We get Rennes on the top line and Augusta now as our primary, so that is awesome, G-Dot. And then here's where US 221 splits off from us, as we're now heading solely north towards Augusta. And here we have a one-liner with Augusta as our primary from 30 miles away. And here in the Augusta area, we meet with Interstate 520, getting signed for Atlanta and Columbia respectively. And now we're meeting with US Highway 78 and 278, as we're going to become a freeway around the heart of Augusta. In fact, here we can see downtown Augusta from the 78, 278, and 25 freeway. And here we are crossing over the Savannah River and into South Carolina. And immediately into South Carolina, US 25 splits off from us as it's getting signed north for North Augusta, while we're now getting signed solely for Aiken. But on our way towards Aiken, we meet with Interstate 520 once again. I mean, if 520 is like a beltway around Augusta, then it should definitely be an even number spur. And here's where US 278 splits off from 1 and 78 as we're now heading towards Clearwater and Aiken. And here in Aiken, we split off from US Highway 78 as it's getting signed for Wagner, and we're now getting signed for Batesburg and Columbia. And on our way out of Aiken, we meet with Interstate 20 proper, which is getting signed for Augusta and Columbia. And here we get a one-liner with Rich Spring as our only control city from 13 miles away. You want to know what the weird thing about this is? Rich Spring is not even on US 1, so why in the world are they signing it? If you want a one-liner for a city on 1, do Batesburg, Leesville, because that's the next town we'll be going to, and plus people would have probably taken Interstate 20 to get to Columbia. Don't sign something not on US 1, SC Dot. In fact, here's the road that will take you to Rich Springs, South Carolina 392, as we're now getting signed for Batesburg, Leesville. Here in Batesburg, Leesville, we meet with US 178, and we're now getting signed solely for Columbia. Apparently, we're now heading on Columbia 32 US 1 now, so interesting. Here we meet with US 378 in Lexington, South Carolina, as we're now getting signed for Columbia, while 378 is going to be heading towards Irmo. And on our way towards downtown Columbia, we meet with Interstate 20, which is now getting signed for Augusta and Florence, respectively. And here we meet with Interstate 26, as it's now getting signed for Greenville/Spartanburg and Charleston. And here's the view of the Columbia skyline as we're about to cross into downtown. And here we meet with US 76 and 378 once again at this street here. And then I decided to skip ahead to the 77 concurrency as we're now getting signed north for Pontiac, which I do not agree with that choice. Pontiac is an unincorporated community here in the Columbia area. That should definitely be placed like Lugoff or Camden or something, not Pontiac. And here in Camden, we meet with US Highway 601 and 1 and 601 are now going to be current as we head through town. In fact, in downtown Camden, we split off from US 601, and we're now going to be heading north with a concurrency of South Carolina 34. And here's where we split off from South Carolina 34 as we're now getting signed for Bethune and Cheraw, which I think are alright choices. In our next mileage time, we get Chirac now as our primary from only 28 miles away. And here's a weird thing, as we're getting closer to Chirac, we now get Wadesboro as our primary from 29 miles away. Again, Wadesboro is not on US 1, it's actually on US Highway 52, so why are we getting signed for a control city on US 52 before we've even met it? And here's that said meeting with US Highway 52, as we're now going to be heading towards downtown Chirac. In the next mileage time, we now get Rockingham as our primary from 26 miles away, which I think is an alright choice. I mean, if you want to do a three-liner and put Wadesboro as the bottom line for 52, that would be cool too. And here's where we split off from US Highway 52, as 52 will be heading northwest towards Wadesboro, while we're going to be heading towards Rockingham. Our next mileage time, we get Rockingham as our primary still from 21 miles away, while Bennettsville is for South Carolina 9. And then once we split off from South Carolina 9, we get a Georgia dyslexic mileage sign with Raleigh on the bottom line from 120 miles away. That is awesome, SC Dot. Well done. So let us see if North Carolina can keep it up, because this is right at the North Carolina and South Carolina border. And here we are entering into the state of North Carolina. Oh boy. And our first major junction on US 1 in North Carolina is US Highway 74, as it's being signed for Monroe and Warrenburg. I don't like those choices. And here in Rockingham, we meet with the beginning of US Highway 220 here. And if you want to check out our video on US 220, it's in the top right corner here. Our first mileage sign in North Carolina, we get Sanford on the bottom line from 48 miles away. I mean, Sanford is still a pretty big city, but if South Carolina was signing Raleigh, then NC Dot should do that too. And here in Aberdeen, we meet with the 15501 here. We're now going to be concurrent with it as we head through Aberdeen and Southern Pines. And we can see that we're now splitting off from 15501 as we're now getting signed solely north for Sanford. And north of that junction, US 1 actually becomes a elevated freeway here, and our first major exit is exit 42A for downtown Southern Pines. Here we get another mileage sign with Cary now as our primary from 53 miles away. I mean, yeah, I get Cary is a pretty big city and in the Raleigh area, but it's also like basically a suburb to Raleigh, so you can just sign Raleigh here instead of Cary. And then here we pass by North Carolina 24 and 27, which gets the awesome control cities of Wellington and Fayetteville. Okay, I don't understand this at all. So you know how we saw that last mileage sign with Cary on the bottom line from 53 miles away? So they decided to just alternate to Raleigh with the same distance. So if they're basically the same distance, then you should have had Raleigh on that last mileage sign, NC Dot. Why do you do this? And here on the outskirts of Sanford, we're now reuniting with 15501 as we're about to head into town. And our first major exit on the second part of the freeway is North Carolina Highway 42, being signed for Asheboro and Fuquay, which are awesome choices. Now we're meeting with US Highway 421, being signed north for Tyler City and Greensboro respectively, and south for Lillington, which are great choices. And here is where 15501 splits off from US 1 as they're getting signed for Pittsboro and Chapel Hill, while we may continue north towards Raleigh. And first we meet with exit 79 here, and this is the most southern part of US 1 that I've been on personally. So north of here we are going to be getting a lot of recommendations. And our next mileage time, we get Raleigh as our primary from 27 miles away. And here is the exit for old US 1 highway before US 1 became a freeway. And this road will actually take you up into downtown Apex. And here we meet with exit 89 for New Hill and Jordan Lake. And this road will actually turn into North Carolina 751, which will take you up into Durham. You're arming with 540 here, and it just gets the Kentucky treatment of the Triangle Expressway. But if you do take this ramp, there are control cities on the distributor lane. And we can see that US 1 is now still getting signed north for Raleigh still. And here we meet with North Carolina Highway 55 getting signed for Apex, Holly Springs, and Fuquay, which are all awesome choices. And here we meet with US Highway 64 getting west for Pittsboro and Asheboro, while 64 East is now going to be concurrent with us. And here is the reassurance shields of US 1 and 64. This picture here, my own picture, is where mileage sign once stood before a huge storm knocked it down. And this is what that mileage sign read, with Raleigh on the top line and Wake Forest as our primary. I mean, I like that choice of Wake Forest because it is the next major city that US 1 passes through, despite it being basically an expert of Raleigh. And here we meet with exit 101 here, Walnut Street and Buck Jones Road, and that exit will actually take you to Crossroads Shopping Plaza, which is a huge shopping plaza in Cary. And we're about to meet with Interstate 40, getting signed for Durham and Benson. Ooh, Benson. And here's the actual meeting, as we're now going to be concurrent with Interstate 440 getting signed for Wake Forest now, which is a good choice. And here we meet with US 70 and North Carolina Highway 50 as they're getting signed for Crabtree Valley and Durham respectively. And this is where we split off from Interstate 440 as we're now going to be joining with our child of US Highway 401 as we're now getting signed for Lewisburg for 401. In fact, here is where we split off from US 401 as it heads north towards Rollsville and Lewisburg, while we're getting signed north for Wake Forest and Henderson. And on our way towards Wake Forest, we meet with 540 once again as it's getting signed for Durham and east for Lewisburg. That's just because of US 401. That should definitely be Rocky Mount, not Lewisburg. And here's an actual unusual thing in the state of North Carolina. Normally we would have a north alternate shield for some of these alternate routes, but for some random reason, NCDOT decided to do a 1A shield instead of the alternate on top of this US Highway shield. Here we meet North Carolina 98 as we're about to head into Wake Forest. And at random interchanges, we are now getting signed north for Henderson because US 1 is actually a freeway in this part of the state. And here we are now merging into US 158 as we're now going to be concurrent with it as we head towards North Carolina and Virginia. Next mileage sign we get South Hill, Virginia as our primary, which I think is an alright choice because if you want to get to Richmond from here, you would probably be taking Interstate 85 instead of US 1. In fact, here we are really close to Interstate 85. And we're now reuniting with US Highway 401 as 1 and 401 are now going to be concurrent with each other. And since they're concurrent all the way up to the North Carolina border, why not just end US 401 here? It just makes more sense. And here we get another mileage sign with Richmond on the bottom line from 105 miles away. This is totally a NC.W. Well done. And here we meet with Interstate 85 getting signed for Henderson and Petersburg. And like I said in the original US 1 video, that Petersburg actually used to say Richmond, but for some reason NC.Dot decided to reverse that decision and just do Petersburg instead. And here we are, ending at the North Carolina and Virginia border with a Welcome to Virginia sign. So with that, we're going to be turning around and doing southbound US 1 Southern. So we begin at the North Carolina and Virginia border here with a Welcome to North Carolina sign. And always down the road, we meet with Interstate 85, getting the same control cities as we saw on northbound US 1. And here we get our first mileage sign with Henderson from 22 miles away. I mean, since we are now concurrent with US Highway 401, it kind of makes sense because even though both roads do take you to Raleigh, it might depend on which way is faster to get there. And here's where US 401 splits off from US 1, as we're now getting signed for Henderson still. For our next mileage time, we actually get Raleigh on the bottom line from 59 miles away, which is awesome. And here's where we split off from US Highway 158, as we're going to be heading south towards Raleigh. And here we get another mileage sign with Raleigh still as our primary from 37 miles away. And a little ways closer, once we get there, we're now getting Sanford as our primary from a good 63 miles away. And then here in the North Raleigh area, meet with Interstate 540 as it's getting signed for Durham. And we're going to be heading into downtown Raleigh. And here we reunite with US Highway 401 once again, as we're now going to be heading south towards downtown. But we actually don't make it to downtown. Instead, we hop onto Interstate 440 here, as we're now getting signed for Sanford. And here we meet with US 70 and North Carolina 50 once again. And now we're meeting with North Carolina 54, along with the Wade Avenue Freeway, which will take you over to Carter Finley Stadium and Lenovo Center. Here we meet with Interstate 40 once again, and make me skip this. And here we get a pull through for US 1 and 64, as we're now getting signed for Apex, Sanford, and Asheboro. I like that. And here's where we split off from US 64, as it's getting signed for Pittsboro and Asheboro. In our next mileage time, we still get Sanford as our primary from 34 miles away. And here we meet with North Carolina 55 once again. Now we meet with the Triangle Expressway or North Carolina 540, as we just get a pull through again for Sanford. And at random junctions, US 1 is still getting signed south for Sanford. And our next mileage, or once we get closer to Sanford, Southern Pines now becomes our primary from 42 miles away. And here's exit 79 once again, which is a shortcut over to Pittsboro. Now we're meeting with 15501, as we're now going to be concurrent with it as we head through Sanford. And here we meet with US 421 once again. And we're now meeting with North Carolina Highway 42 before 15501 splits off from us. And our next mileage time, we still get Southern Pines as our primary from 26 miles away. And this is where 15501 splits off, as it's being signed for Pinehurst and Carthage, while we're still getting Southern Pines. And here in the Cameron area, we meet with North Carolina 24 and 27, and they just get the same control cities that we saw in northbound. And here we get a three-liner here with Rockingham now as our primary from 38 miles away. I mean, sure, this might seem provincial, but Rockingham is actually bigger than Cheraw, so I kind of agree with this choice here. And this here is in the Aberdeen area, where 15501 is splitting off from us for good, as they're getting signed for Rayford and Laurinburg, while we're now getting signed south for Rockingham. Our next mileage time, we now get Cheraw as our primary from 32 miles away, which is a good choice because we're only 10 miles from Rockingham. And then here in the Rockingham area, we meet with US 220 here. And our last major junction in the state of North Carolina is US 74. And we get one more mileage time. We get Columbia? Columbia from 99 miles away. So not only is NC signing Virginia's capital at the North Carolina-Virginia state line, now they're signing South Carolina's capital at the Carolina state line. So this is a rare W and awesome moment here, NC. And we're now entering into the state of South Carolina, so let us see if South Carolina sticks with it. And now we get an even awesomer mileage sign with Columbia on the bottom line and Charlotte being mentioned because of South Carolina 9. This is awesome! And here we meet with US Highway 52, as 52 and 1 are now going to be heading out of Cheraw and towards Columbia. Now I do not like this at all here because US 52 is getting signed for Society and Hill and Florence, while we just get signed for Camden. If US 52 gets two cities, then why can't we get Camden and Columbia? Come on, SC Dot, you're doing so well. And here in the Camden area, we meet with 521 and US Highway 601 respectively. And here's where we split off from US Highway 601, as it'll take you over to Interstate 20, as they're getting signed for Columbia and Orangeburg respectively, while we get Elgin now as our primary. I mean, it kind of makes sense because people would probably be taking Interstate 20 again to get to Columbia from here. So Elgin is a pretty good choice for one. And then here in the Elgin area, we meet with Interstate 77 getting signed North Fort Charlotte and South Fort Charleston. And here we meet with US 76 and 378 as we head through downtown Columbia. And here we get an awesome view of the Columbia skyline as we're up on this hill here. And here in downtown, we actually meet with US 21 and 321 here, along with US 176. And on the other side of the river, we meet with Interstate 26 as it's getting signed for Greenville, Spartanburg, and Charleston, respectively. And we're now meeting with Interstate 20 once again as it's being signed for Augusta and Florence again. And here we say goodbye to US 378 forever as we're now getting signed south for Aiken. In our next mileage line, we do get Aiken as our primary from 45 miles away. Here in Batesburg, Leesville, we meet with US 178 here as we're still getting signed south for Aiken. And here in Aiken, we're meeting with US Highway 78 and we're now getting signed south for Augusta, which is awesome. And on our way to Augusta, we meet with US 278 and 278 and 25 are now going to be current as we head towards downtown Augusta. And here we meet with Interstate 520 getting signed for Columbia and Atlanta. And we're now entering into the state of Georgia after crossing over the Savannah River here. And this exit here will take you into downtown Augusta. And here we say goodbye to US 25 as US 25 will be heading down towards Brunswick. And here's where we split off from US Highway 78 as we're now going to be heading towards Rennes and Louisville. And on our way out of Augusta, we meet with Interstate 520 here getting signed for Columbia and Atlanta. Our next mileage line, we get Rennes on the top line and Louisville, Georgia as our primary now from 43 miles away. And here in the Rennes area, we meet with US Highway 221 and 221 and US 1 are now going to be concurrent. Our next mileage line, we now get Waverly as our primary from 25 miles away. Strange. For our next mileage line, we now get Swainsboro from 31 miles away. So why couldn't Swainsboro just get on that last mileage line? Here in Swainsboro, we meet with US Highway 80 once again. And we now get Lyons on the top line and Baxley now as our primary from 59 miles away. Here we are meeting with Interstate 16 in the middle of nowhere, Georgia. And we're now meeting with US Highway 280 in Lyons as we're now getting signed south for Baxley. But our next mileage line, we get now Alma as our primary from 49 miles away, which I think is an alright choice because that is a relatively sizable town and it's where we meet with US 23. And on our way to Baxley and Alma, we actually passed by Santa Claus, Georgia, which I did feature in the Christmas video if you want to check that out in the top right corner here. And here we are meeting US Highway 341 in Baxley as we're now getting signed south for Alma and head towards US 23. In our next mileage line, we actually now get Waycross as our primary from 45 miles away, which that's awesome. And it looks like GDOT is up to their old tricks again and is now having Blackshear as our primary, but that's for Georgia Highway 15, and I do not like that. And outside of Alma, we meet with US Highway 23, and like going northbound on US 1, I'm going to be skipping the US 23 concurrency. So here's where US 1 splits off from US Highway 23 in the Jacksonville area, as we're going to be heading into town along a freeway here. And here we meet with Interstate 95, and just like going northbound on US 1, we get no control city for 95. And here we reunite with US Highway 17, and US 1 and 17 are now going to be heading through downtown Jacksonville. Hey, look at that! We meet US Highway 23 once again. And we're going to be still heading south towards US 90. In fact, here's that said meeting with US Highway 90, and US 1 and 90 are now going to be concurrent. In fact, here we join with Interstate 95 for a brief concurrency as we're going to be heading towards Jacksonville Beaches and Daytona Beach. And here is where we split off from both Interstate 95 and US 90, as we're now just being signed south for Phillips Highway, which again makes sense because if you saw on the map earlier, we are now basically just paralleling Interstate 95 as we head through the southern Jacksonville suburbs. Here we meet with Interstate 295 on the south side of Jacksonville. And I decided to skip all the way down to St. Augustine because there's not really much interesting on US 1. And here's where we meet the Florida A18 in the St. Augustine area. Now we're meeting with Interstate 95 in the St. Augustine area as it just gets the same control cities of Miami and Jacksonville. And here we get another mileage sign with Daytona as our primary from 37 miles away. And here in the Daytona Beach area, we meet with US 92 as it's getting the same control cities that we saw on northbound US 1. And here we meet with Florida Highway 400 once again we'll take you over to Interstate 4. And here you are meeting Florida Highway 50 in Titusville or Titusville. And we're now passing by Florida Highway 405, which will take you over to the Kennedy Space Center. So if anyone likes space exploration or rockets, this exit's for you. And on that road, we are now getting signed south for Cocoa Beach, which I think is an awesome choice. Here in the Cocoa Beach area, we meet with US Highway 192, and it just gets the same control cities like going northbound on US 1. And here we meet with Florida Highway 60 here, as we're going to be heading through this beach town. Here we meet with Florida Highway 70, and we can see that there's a mileage sign up ahead. It looks like we're now getting signed for Stewart from 17 miles away. And after going through Stewart, we now get Jupiter as our primary from 16 miles away. And then a few miles down the road, we're now passing through downtown West Palm Beach. And still in the West Palm Beach area, we meet with US 98 along with Florida Highway 80 here. And this subway looks actually very interesting. And here we are going through another downtown as we head closer towards Fort Lauderdale. And here we meet with Interstate 595 and the same stuff as we saw on northbound US 1. And then here in the heart of Miami, we meet with Interstate 195, and hey, it looks like FDOT does have the tendency to sign US 27 going this direction. So that's awesome. Here we meet with Interstate 395, along with Florida Highway A1A once again. And here we meet with US Highway 41, still in the heart of Miami. And this here is the ending of Interstate 95, and sadly we do not have a direct access to it going for northbound 95, going southbound on 1. And on our way out of Miami, we pass by Florida Highway 9 once again. Strange how there's a Florida 9B and a Florida 9, but they're like really far apart from each other. And here we cross under the Florida's Turnpike in the southern Miami exurbs. And like Interstate 95, it's just a wide junction when we meet the southern ending of the Florida Turnpike. And now we can see that US 1 is now getting signed south for Key West, all the way down here in deep south Miami. And we can see that we're still another 106 miles out from our southern terminus. That is a pretty long drive. And on our way to Key West, we actually passed by Fred the tree here growing along this old pedestrian bridge. And then we finally made it to Key West, where we have a Welcome to Key West sign, so that is awesome. And we made it to the southern terminus of US Highway 1, and we do get an End US 1 shield, so that is pretty awesome. And it looks like that there's a little cool store to buy US 1 souvenirs. I definitely want to check that place out whenever I visit Key West. So with that, we end US 1 Southern and we move on to all the places I'll go. See, these are all the places that I'd visit and recommend, because I've been on US Highway 1 in the Raleigh area and would definitely like to recommend some places. So with that, here's my list. If you have any places for me to visit along US 1, or any other places you'd like for me to recommend in the Raleigh area, please let me know down in the comment section below. And I'd love to recommend places for you. So that ends US Highway 1 Southern. Thank y'all so much for watching this cool birthday episode on US Highway 1 Southern. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about the highway, definitely here in the southern region. And this series is actually going to be really exciting, as next couple weeks we're going to be visiting the Mid-Atlantic region and then the New England region, and we'll have the supercuts at the end of the month. And if you have any requests for any of these upcoming highways, please let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll make sure to shout you out once these highways release. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next week as we head to the Mid-Atlantic region of US 1.